I, a 28-year-old woman, recently made the difficult decision to end my marriage with Carson, who is also 28. The catalyst for this decision was a heated argument revolving around his behavior during a dinner with his ex-partner. Despite my earnest explanation and efforts to resolve the issue, both Carson and our mutual friends have accused me of overreacting and being excessively sensitive. Seeking clarity and unbiased perspectives, I turned to this forum. Carson and I shared a marital bond for 5 years, during which we were blessed with a beautiful 4-year-old son. Our journey began in college, where we fell in love, and shortly after graduating, we embarked on the adventure of marriage. Despite the early bliss, challenges emerged. Initially, I temporarily stepped away from my career after tying the knot, a decision that was met with mixed emotions. However, 6 months following the birth of our son, I made the courageous choice to re-enter the workforce. It wasn't an easy decision, as Carson's income alone couldn't adequately sustain our family. My intention was clear: to utilize my education and skills to contribute meaningfully to our household finances. Regrettably, my return to work sparked discord. Carson, feeling emasculated, interpreted my decision as a lack of confidence in his abilities. Convincing him otherwise was a prolonged and arduous task. Eventually, he relented, acknowledging the benefits of shared responsibilities, particularly the precious time it afforded him with our son. However, the reality was far from ideal. Balancing a demanding job with household chores proved to be an overwhelming endeavor. Carson, occupied with his physically demanding role as a personal trainer, believed that household responsibilities should predominantly fall on my shoulders. Despite our initial agreement to share these duties, his contributions were sporadic and often subpar. This resulted in frequent arguments and simmering resentments. The strain of managing both professional obligations and domestic chores took its toll on my well-being. Seeking an outlet for my mounting stress, I turned to smoking, an unhealthy coping mechanism that only exacerbated the underlying tensions in our relationship. Furthermore, the burden of childcare disproportionately fell upon me. While Carson occasionally assisted with picking up our son from daycare, I bore the responsibility of dropping him off each morning. This inequity in parental duties further fueled my frustrations. Navigating the complexities of marriage, motherhood, and career proved to be an uphill battle. Despite my best efforts to maintain harmony within our household, the incessant conflicts and unmet expectations eventually led me to reassess the viability of our union. Thus, with a heavy heart but a resolute spirit, I made the painful decision to part ways with Carson, hoping to forge a brighter path forward for both myself and our son. Living under these circumstances for the past few years has been incredibly challenging, and truth be told, I'm far from being a superhero. Despite Carson's relentless jabs at my cooking and homemaking skills, which, ironically, he himself lacked, I soldiered on primarily for the sake of our son. It's been a tough ride, made even tougher by Carson's inability to recognize his own shortcomings and appreciate my efforts. Last year, I reached a breaking point and decided to hire a maid, hoping to alleviate some of the household burdens. However, Carson's reaction was far from supportive. Instead of acknowledging the additional help, he used it as ammunition to further belittle me, claiming it was a reflection of my incompetence as a homemaker. His comparisons to other women in his life, particularly his ex-girlfriend Emily, who he invited over for dinner without consulting me, only added insult to injury. Emily, Carson's high school sweetheart, seemed to embody everything he believed I wasn't. As they reminisced about their past, Carson's behavior became increasingly flirtatious, bordering on disrespectful. His jokes about my cooking, homemaking skills, and even my job were thinly veiled attempts to undermine my self-esteem. It felt like he was purposely trying to humiliate me in front of Emily, making me question the very foundation of our relationship. While there were moments of happiness sprinkled throughout our marriage, they were overshadowed by Carson's insensitivity and disregard for my feelings. His blatant disregard for my boundaries and his eagerness to please his ex-girlfriend at my expense were the final straws. It became painfully clear that our marriage had reached an impasse, and divorce was the only viable option. So, after much contemplation, I made the difficult decision to end things with Carson. It wasn't an impulsive choice, but rather the culmination of years of feeling unappreciated and undervalued. It's time for me to prioritize my well-being and happiness, even if it means walking away from the life I once knew. I found myself yearning to express the overwhelming stress I was under, but in reality, my efforts paled in comparison to Emily's seemingly flawless execution of household tasks. Carson's cutting remarks about watching and learning hit me like a ton of bricks, igniting a storm of emotions within me. Though I felt on the verge of tears, I refused to succumb to the humiliation, determined not to grant Emily the satisfaction of witnessing my vulnerability. Instead, I plastered on a forced smile, silently enduring the discomfort. As the evening wore on, Carson's behavior only served to solidify my decision to leave. His casual invitation to Emily for dinner without consulting me felt like a blatant disregard for my feelings, a painful reminder of the diminishing respect within our relationship. Observing Carson's overly friendly and flirtatious demeanor towards Emily further fueled my growing resentment. The jokes about my homemaking abilities, thinly veiled insults disguised as jest, cut deeply, leaving me feeling inadequate and unappreciated. By the time dessert was served, I had reached a breaking point. In the quiet of the night, after Carson had retired to bed, I seized the opportunity to make my escape. With trembling hands, I hastily gathered a few belongings, including essentials for my son, unsure of what the future held. The weight of my decision hung heavy in the air as I quietly slipped out of the house and into the waiting cab bound for my parents' home. Arriving at my childhood sanctuary in the dead of night, I was greeted by the warm embrace of my mother, whose comforting presence provided a fleeting sense of solace amidst the chaos. However, as I attempted to articulate the events of the evening, the floodgates of emotion burst open, and I found myself consumed by a torrent of tears. My son, sensing my distress, added his cries to the cacophony, his confusion mirroring my own tumultuous emotions. In the safety of my parents' embrace, I finally found the courage to vocalize the turmoil that had been brewing within me for far too long. Their unwavering support and reassurance offered a glimmer of hope in the darkness, bolstering my resolve to take control of my destiny. With their encouragement, I knew that I was not alone in this journey. The following morning, Carson's frantic inquiries only served to underscore the gravity of my decision. With a heavy heart, I relayed the truth. I could no longer tolerate his dismissive attitude and hurtful behavior. His initial laughter in response to my declaration only fueled the fire of my indignation, prompting a torrent of pent-up frustration and anger to spill forth. In the face of his incredulous disbelief, I stood my ground, refusing to be swayed by his attempts to minimize the severity of the situation. Though his words stung, I remained steadfast in my conviction that I deserved better. With each passing moment, my resolve to forge a new path strengthened, fueled by the knowledge that I no longer needed to endure the toxic cycle of disrespect and emotional manipulation. The heart of the matter lies in the stark reality that Carson's jests were not mere playful banter, they cut deep, revealing a callousness that belied his claims of humor. Despite my best efforts and the weight of responsibilities I carried, he continued to push me beyond my limits with his relentless taunts, all while insisting they were innocent jokes. Yet, the truth was far from amusing. Attempting to explain to Carson that my decision to leave wasn't solely hinged on his tasteless humor proved to be an exercise in futility. For years, I had endured his behavior, grappling with a myriad of issues that had slowly eroded the foundation of our marriage. It wasn't a sudden impulse, but a culmination of years of dissatisfaction and unhappiness. However, when Carson finally comprehended the gravity of the situation, his response was to cast himself as the victim, accusing me of leading him on with vague insinuations of departure. This only added insult to injury, fueling my frustration and sense of isolation. Unable to bear the weight of his manipulative tactics and my own mounting anger, I reluctantly ended the call, realizing that reasoning with him was futile. But little did I anticipate the storm that would follow. Carson rallied our mutual friends to his side, painting me as the antagonist in our marital saga. Their barrage of messages, laden with guilt and admonishment, only served to deepen my resolve. Despite my attempts to convey the complexities of our situation, I was met with skepticism and indifference. In a bid to set the record straight, I turned to social media, laying bare the intricacies of our relationship in a desperate plea for understanding. Yet, even as I poured my heart out, Carson seized the opportunity to present himself as the repentant hero promising change and redemption. His sudden transformation and the subsequent involvement of our friends felt like a calculated maneuver designed to sway me from my decision. But beneath the veneer of contrition, I detected a familiar pattern of empty promises and deceit. Years of broken trust and shattered dreams had left me wary of his intentions. Despite the chorus of voices urging me to reconsider, I remained resolute. I could no longer ignore the glaring red flags or sacrifice my own well-being for the sake of maintaining appearances. Carson's behavior was not only toxic but also posed a threat to the emotional well-being of our son. And so, with a heavy heart and a newfound sense of determination, I stood firm in my decision to leave. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that I could no longer remain shackled to a relationship that had long since lost its luster. For the sake of myself and my son, I had to break free from the chains of Carson's toxicity and forge a new path forward, one defined by strength, resilience, and self-respect. For years, I had persevered through the trials and tribulations of marriage, all with the steadfast commitment to provide a stable environment for our son. Yet, as the weight of our struggles grew heavier, I found myself standing on the precipice of a decision that would alter the course of our lives: divorce. It wasn't a choice made in haste, but one born out of necessity, a last resort in my pursuit of a better future for my child. When Carson was served with the divorce papers, the atmosphere crackled with tension, his reaction mirroring the storm brewing within him. The revelation that I sought full custody of our son and ownership of the cherished family home struck him like a bolt of lightning, igniting a tempest of anger and resentment. But in that moment, I remained resolute, unwavering in my belief that the house, imbued with the memories of our shared history, rightfully belonged to me. It was a testament to the sacrifices I had made, the countless hours spent juggling work, childcare, and household responsibilities, often with little to no support from him. As Carson vehemently argued for joint custody, I couldn't shake the gnawing doubts about his ability to be a responsible father. Despite his protests, I held my ground, offering him visitation rights while standing firm on my decision for full custody. Our son's future hung in the balance, and I was determined to shield him from the tumultuous environment that had come to define our marriage. During our emotionally charged conversation, Carson's facade of stoicism crumbled, revealing a vulnerability I had rarely seen. Tears cascaded down his cheeks as he bared his soul, confessing to taking our relationship for granted. His words struck a chord within me, stirring a tumult of conflicting emotions. Yet, even as I grappled with the ache of empathy, I remained steadfast in my resolve. His heartfelt pleas for reconciliation tugged at my heartstrings, tempting me with the possibility of a different outcome. But beneath the veneer of remorse lay the harsh reality of our fractured marriage, scarred by years of neglect and unfulfilled promises. As much as I longed for a different ending, I knew that I couldn't turn back the hands of time. And so, with a heavy heart and unwavering determination, I stood by my decision, knowing that it was the only path forward. Carson's inability to forgive me or himself only served to underscore the validity of my choice. It was a painful realization, but one that ultimately paved the way for a new beginning, one free from the shackles of a broken marriage. In the wake of my decision to file for divorce and seek full custody of our son, I found myself embarking on a journey fraught with emotional turbulence, introspection, and the weight of external expectations. It was a path marked by uncertainty, but one I knew I had to tread for the sake of my own well-being and that of my child. My relationship with Carson, my husband of 5 years, had reached a breaking point, but the fissures had been forming long before our decision to part ways. We were once two young souls entwined in the throes of love, our bond forged in the crucible of college romance. But as the years passed, the idyllic veneer of our union began to crack, revealing deeper fractures beneath the surface. The birth of our son should have been a joyous occasion, a moment of unbridled celebration and unity. Instead, it served as a catalyst for discord, laying bare the fault lines that had long lain dormant in our marriage. Carson's expectations of me as a wife and mother were unrealistic, his demands relentless and his appreciation lacking. I made the difficult decision to temporarily leave my job to care for our son, believing it to be the best course of action for our family. But what began as a noble sacrifice soon devolved into a cycle of exhaustion and resentment as Carson failed to acknowledge the gravity of my contributions. His dismissive attitude towards my role in our household left me feeling undervalued and invisible, my efforts unappreciated and overlooked. The final straw came during a dinner party that Carson had arranged, inviting his ex-girlfriend Emily into our home without so much as a thought for my feelings. As I watched him flirt shamelessly with her, oblivious to my discomfort, something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt erupted in a torrent of anger and defiance, culminating in my decision to leave him once and for all. Leaving Carson was not an easy choice, but it was a necessary one. With our son in tow, I sought refuge in the comforting embrace of my parents' home, determined to break free from the toxic cycle of abuse and manipulation that had defined our marriage for far too long. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges, chief among them the legal battle for custody of our son. Navigating the murky waters of divorce proceedings was a daunting task, one that tested my resolve and resilience at every turn. Carson fought tooth and nail to retain custody rights, his determination matched only by his refusal to acknowledge the harm he had inflicted upon our family. But I refused to back down, steadfast in my belief that our son deserved better than a life marred by dysfunction and discord. As the legal proceedings dragged on, I found solace in the unwavering support of my family, friends, and legal counsel, who stood by my side through every twist and turn of the tumultuous journey. Their encouragement bolstered my spirits, reminding me that I was not alone in my fight for justice and that the truth would ultimately prevail. With each passing day, I grew stronger, more determined to reclaim my life and secure a brighter future for my son. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, I remained resolute in my conviction that I was doing the right thing. For while the road to freedom may be long and arduous, I refuse to let fear or doubt deter me from pursuing a life of happiness, peace, and fulfillment for myself and my child. The aftermath of my decision to file for divorce left me grappling with the realization that even those closest to me had chosen sides, siding with Carson without truly understanding the complexities of our situation. While their judgment stung, I resolved not to let it sway me from my path, knowing that their opinions were based on limited knowledge of my struggles. In an unexpected turn of events, Carson paid a visit to my parents' house, where our son and I were staying. Despite the tension hanging in the air, Carson's demeanor was surprisingly calm as he engaged in polite conversation with me and my parents. It was a strange and somewhat surreal experience, but amidst the awkwardness, I found a strange sense of reassurance that Carson wasn't there to escalate the situation. As our meeting progressed, Carson expressed his desire to spend time with our son, a request I readily granted. Watching them interact brought a bittersweet warmth to my heart, seeing the joy on our son's face as he reunited with his father after what felt like an eternity. It was a moment of pure innocence and connection, reminding me of the importance of fostering a relationship between father and son. In a poignant moment before Carson's departure, our son innocently inquired about when he would see his dad again. In that instant, a wave of clarity washed over me, prompting a shift in my perspective. Despite Carson's shortcomings as a husband and father, his willingness to acknowledge his faults and commit to improvement resonated with me. At the doorstep, Carson humbly admitted his shortcomings as a father thus far but expressed his readiness to change and grow. He acknowledged the need for external support, proposing the idea of hiring a nanny to assist with aspects of parenting he felt uncertain about. It was a small but significant step towards reconciliation, one that left me contemplating the possibility of a future where Carson played a more active role in our son's life. Following Carson's visit, during which he expressed his desire for partial custody of our son, I agreed to reconsider my stance on full custody. After his departure, I promptly contacted my attorney to inform them of my decision, signaling a shift in our ongoing legal proceedings. As negotiations for our divorce commenced, Carson and his legal team surprised us by adopting a more conciliatory approach, perhaps signaling a sense of remorse on his part. Despite the complexities of untangling our lives, we've been striving to maintain a sense of civility and cooperation throughout the process. In addition to addressing the division of assets and other legal matters, we've begun to hammer out a custody arrangement for our son. While the details remain informal for now, we've tentatively agreed that he will split his time evenly between our respective homes, fostering a sense of stability and continuity for him amidst the upheaval. As my son prepares to spend time with his father, I find solace in the knowledge that I'll still have regular opportunities to see him. Carson has also reached out to his mother for support, a gesture that speaks volumes about her character and the enduring bonds within our extended family. Despite the challenges we've faced, I harbor no bitterness towards Carson. Instead, I remain hopeful that we can navigate this transition with grace and compassion, prioritizing the well-being of our son above all else. As we continue on this journey of separation and rediscovery, I look forward to sharing more insights and reflections on navigating the complexities of relationships and resilience. Stay tuned for further updates on our evolving family dynamic.